might not go upstairs anyway because I might take my shower in the morning. It did pretty good. Only thing I did just find a plug to go to it.
What is atrial fibrillation? I like to tell patients, you should think of your heart to be like a house. The heart muscle is the brick walls on the outside. The heart chambers are like the bedrooms, and the heart valves are like the doors opening and closing between the bedrooms. The blood flow to the heart is the plumbing, and your heartbeat actually runs through an electrical network. So atrial fibrillation is an irregularity within the electrical network involving the upper chambers of the heart.
We have two upper chambers called atria and two bottom chambers, which are ventricles. And the atria are integral in helping the ventricle, which is the main pumping chamber, fill up with blood so you can have an efficient contraction and a good pump and good pumping of blood to all the organs. So when you have AFib, the atria, instead of being in a normal coordinated rhythm with the bottom chamber, the top chamber starts to go extremely fast and irregular and starts to almost quiver, where it's not able to contract in a strong way to provide good transport of blood from the top chamber to the bottom chamber, and that can lead to a lot of symptoms.
Starting after the wonderful age of 40, anybody has a 20% chance that they could develop atrial fibrillation over their remaining lifetime. For patients over the age of 65, about 10% of people could have atrial fibrillation. In the US alone, they are projecting that by 2030, there will be over 12 million people with atrial fibrillation.
There's one shortcut to this process, this entire process. We realized that you are always most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. Who were you? What problem have you solved? What question have you answered? What challenge have you overcome?
Welcome to the Think Marketing Podcast, the #1 podcast for helping you grow your influence on YouTube and then turning that influence into a high impact and high profit online business. My name is Heather Torres, and if you're new here, I want to welcome you to the podcast. We deliver a brand new episode every single Tuesday, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you're consuming this content from. And today's episode is brought to you by Grow with Video Live, our annual conference happening this fall in 2021 fun. And I have some exciting news of a free ticket that you could win, an all access pass. And I'll tell you more about how to do that after this episode. Now, we're going to jump right into today's featured conversation with Sean Cannell and Rory Vaden. This conversation had me on the edge of my seat because I think if there's one thing you should be focusing on with your YouTube channel and your business, it is definitely your personal brand. Sean and Rory really break down exactly how to do this and the 4 steps to focus on if you're building a brand company. Now, you're on YouTube, you're creating content, which means you are a brand, whether it's your face or your company's face. And I want to make sure you get the most out of today's episode. So cut out distractions, lean in, and let's get into today's featured conversation.
So how do you find and clarify your niche? How do you define your core message? How do you stand out amongst the competition and really build a powerful personal brand that breaks through the noise? If you want to do that this year, Rory Vaden is your guy. And I'm so excited to get into this conversation today. He helps people launch best-selling books and courses, land high-paying speaking engagements, impact millions of lives, build reoccurring revenue streams, generate leads while you're asleep, get access to a network of industry leaders, build an online following, get featured in mainstream media, and all of that really comes from building a powerful personal brand. So I can't wait for this conversation with my friend Rory Vaden. Rory, how's it going?
Buddy, thanks for having me. I'm so excited about this. You know how much I love and respect what you do, so it's good to be back with you.
The feeling's mutual, and I'm so fired up about this conversation. You know, if anybody's listening to the Think Marketing podcast, they're already probably thinking in terms of the power of a personal brand, of branding yourself, of marketing. Obviously, it's the Think Marketing podcast. But as we go into a new year, why personal branding? Why building a brand that cuts through the noise and really positioning your brand right? Why does it matter right now?
Well, I mean, I think the personal branding is basically the digitization of reputation, right? Like reputation is something we all understand and we go, yeah, we all have one and we all need one and it matters. When you hear personal brand, people are like, I don't know, I don't really like social media, I'm too busy, blah, blah. But it's like, no. Personal branding is just the digitization of reputation. So whether you like it or not, you have to have one. And if ultimately, if people don't know about you, they can't buy from you. And so you are either actively influencing that conversation and you have a strategy for it, or you're just letting it happen to you, which is not something I would recommend. Just like I would say, you should care about your reputation. You should care about your personal brand.
Man, that's powerful. And I was reading on your blog, and you talk about one of the biggest mistakes people make when building a personal brand, which is maybe one of the myths of why people think, well, I don't want to build like a personal brand. Like I'm not like an Instagram influencer. I don't need to have like a web page all about me. People don't want to see pictures of what I'm eating during the day. Why would I need a personal brand? But that is kind of the big mistake that you define on your blog. What is that mistake?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake that people make with their personal brand is they make it about themselves. Your personal brand is not about you. Your personal brand is about the problem you solve in the service to other people. And the best piece of personal branding advice I've ever received, I wish this was a Rory Vaden quote, but it is not. I can't take credit for it because there's a guy named Larry Winget who told me this when I was early in my career. He said, Rory, the goal is to find your uniqueness so that you can exploit it in the service of others. That's what we're trying to do. Find your uniqueness so that you can exploit it in the service of others. And that was powerful advice. But ironically, Larry wasn't actually in the business of teaching people how to do that. He was just a speaker saying that that's what you need to do. And so when we started Brand Builders Group, this is our second company. We sold our last business back in 2018. And so we had to be in a new space, start a new business. We thought, gosh, this is what we want to help people do. We developed a systematic process for how to find your uniqueness, how to walk any person through a series of questions is what it is. It's called the Brand DNA Helix to help you hone in and figure out what is unique about you? Where is your superpower? And that was the start of Brand Builders Group, and here we are.
Man, that's so powerful. And I want to hear about the brand DNA helix and go through how I can find, my core message, clarify my superpower, and those listening, we could kind of dial in our personal brand. But take us back for those that are meeting you for the first time.
Sure.
You've been on your own journey as a professional speaker, New York Times bestselling author. You've been in the corporate space, Fortune 500, all kinds of different things that you've done. What's been like your personal journey uncovering your own personal brand?
Yeah, well, I think the genesis of, well, here's the thing is when I was 17, I had this calling on my heart. Like for me, I felt it was a calling from God. And Brand Builders Group, we serve what we call mission-driven messengers. And so we speak to people who have that kind of calling, because I felt like I was supposed to go out and talk to the world. And for me, I was very clear on self-discipline. And so I was like, self-discipline is the thing I'm supposed to go talk about. And so my first company was disciplinedynamic.com. It was terrible. You go to Discipline Dynamic and there was this lightning crash, Discipline Dynamic. It was sweet. Like I look back on those days, they were sweet days, but I was very clear, but so I had that working for me, but nobody wants discipline. We know we need it, but we don't really want it. And people have to, marketing is like, you have to give people what they want. That's what attracts them. And so some years later, through the course of mentorship, I had somebody tell me, Rory, what is the problem that you solve? Self-discipline is the answer, but what's the question? And that was a really huge moment for me, was to figure out, and this is to me the genesis of all personal brands, is being able to answer this one question in one word. And most people cannot do it, which is, what problem do you solve? And that question is difficult, but it's important because it helps you figure out, what have I earned the right to talk about? What is the relevance of me in other people's lives? The intersection of that is at the problem I can solve for them. And so for me, back in those days, the problem that I solved was procrastination. And once we figured out that procrastination was the problem, I became, just like we encourage people to do today, is you have to become an ambassador of the problem, not just an ambassador of the solution, because people buy solutions to problems more than they buy like luxuries. And so, we studied procrastination. We did all these, independent studies that got me on national TV. And that led us to coming up with the metaphor of take the stairs, which was the title of my first New York Times bestselling book, which was how I really broke through the wall. It was a metaphor for doing things you should do that you don't feel like doing, which is the message of self-discipline. But what I was selling was the problem of procrastination, and people bought onto that. And a lot of people struggle with that, Sean, because they have too many messages to too many audiences, and they're not clear about what problem they solve. If you're not clear about what problem you solve, there's no way in hell your audience ever will be. There's no way your prospects ever will be. And so people just market a bunch of stuff about a bunch of stuff, and they are part of the noise. The reason you're caught up in the noise is because you're part of the noise. It's kind of like if you're, if you're at a party and a bunch of people are chatting and we're all talking, if you just come in and kind of like talk loudly, nobody will hear you. But if you like ping a glass of crystal, it has this piercing clarity that cuts right through the noise. And that's what you need. You need piercing clarity. And most people don't do that work. And so they ultimately become part of the noise. They stay stuck in the noise, and they never break through what we call Sheehan's wall, to where they break free of that and become the industry leader or the expert in their field, et cetera.
Man, that's so powerful. You dropped a lot of nuggets in there. And I want to hear more about Sheehan's Wall, because where you said too many messages to too many different audiences. And I think that we help a lot of people build their influence on YouTube. And we want to talk about so many different things, make videos on so many different things. We're multi-passionate. And even as entrepreneurs, we're maybe challenge to come up with what is our message that's going to cut through the noise. So what is Sheehan's Wall?
Yeah, so Sheehan's Wall we named it after a colleague of mine, Peter Sheehan, who originally kind of shared this construct with me, and then we've adapted it to fit personal brands. But it's super simple. It's basically in any industry or vertical or space, there's two groups of people. There's the unknown, and then there are the known. And most of us are unknown. We're trying to break through to become known. And so there's this huge, invisible, thick wall that is Sheehan's Wall. And what most of us do when we start out is we hear all these different ideas about all these things we could do to grow our reach, to grow our brand, right? And we're multi-passionate. So it's like, I love leadership and communication and sales, or I love fitness and nutrition and mental health and, spa days and lifestyle stuff. And so we have a lot of messages to a lot of audiences. We hear all these different tactics like YouTube, podcasts, social media, blah, 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 email list, and all these different business models like membership site, video course, live events, coaching programs, consulting, keynotes. And the problem is when you have diluted focus, you get diluted results. When you have diluted focus, you bounce off the wall. You absorb into the noise. You become part of the noise. And the way to break through Sheehan's Wall, ironically, is to talk about fewer things in fewer places, to become the world's leading expert on one thing. And that is how you break through the wall. Now, it doesn't mean you have to only do that one thing forever, but that's how you break through the wall. Once you break through the wall and you're on the other side, you can expand into all sorts of different messages and business models, right? Like Oprah, Tony Robbins, they can talk about all sorts of stuff. Gary Vaynerchuk's a perfect example of this. He talks about all sorts of stuff today. But in the beginning, he broke through the wall by talking about one thing, wine, on one medium, YouTube. And people forget that. Amazon broke through the wall as a company by selling one thing, books, right? Like we all forget it because now you buy cars and laptops and your toilet paper all off Amazon. But it's in the beginning, it was just books. So you have to become known for one thing, and that's how you break through the wall. And so, part of the work that we try to help people do is figure out what is their one thing that they could do to break through the wall.
That's brilliant. And man, as the world gets noisier and as there's more options than ever before, Instagram, TikTok, podcast, Clubhouse, it's all over the place. And there's so much noise in the world. Diluted focus leads to diluted results. And so breaking through on the one thing is so powerful. It reminds me when I was on my personal journey of discovering this, and I just thought about my Instagram bio, and I was working at a church at the time, and my Instagram bio, I was a pastor, but I was also a content creator, and I was already helping people find cameras and stuff, and tapping my toes into what I'm doing today. But I was so multi-passionate, and my Instagram account was not about who I served. It was about me. So I said, well, I'm a pastor, I'm a content creator, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a dog lover, I'm a music fan. And it was just this list about me. And when everything changed, Rory, was when I shifted and I changed my Instagram bio. And I just use that as an example, my email tagline, my social media profile across the board. And I galvanized the focus of my YouTube channel to, I help people build their influence with YouTube. And everything changed. Like it really was, it still took time, and I had to build around that new clear message, but it brought so much clarity to my social media. It brought clarity to my strategy, and it absolutely led to where things were today. And even though I was actually doing that at the time, I was clouding my own message by making it about me, and I was bouncing off of Sheehan's Wall.
Yeah. I mean, you're a great example of this, Sean. I mean, for those of you, like for you listening, I had one of my best keynote clients ever literally asked me the question, who do you know that is great at teaching people how to do video? And my brain immediately went to Sean. Right. And like we are getting to know each other, like we're pals, but it's not like we're best friends. Like we've hung out a little bit. But I was like, oh, you need Sean. And that's, the human brain is a mental filing cabinet. Right. And so you want to occupy one little box in their brain, like one little file in their brain where it's like, I need a surgeon. I need a orthopedic surgeon. Okay, who do I call? I need a child, a pediatrician. I need someone to clean my carpet. I need someone to, wash my car. There's like these little boxes. You need to own a box. It's like you need to pick a box and own it. And so like at Brand Builders, this was a decision we had to make. We only work with personal brands. We do not work with companies. We know we can make a lot of money working with companies, but our passion is for the mission-driven messenger. We brand people. We brand faces. We work with individuals. Now, they could work at a company. I mean, all of them work at some company. But, by turning away other things, it's weird because it feels like it would be limiting. It feels like it would cost you, but it's the opposite. You're serving a smaller audience in a deeper way, and that is depth and substance, and that's what creates the power and the force to break through the wall.
Man, this is so powerful, and I'm excited to get into this brand DNA helix because we're going to go through Rory's framework to help you clarify. If you're like, okay, I want to break through the wall, I want to clarify my message, I want to figure it out. But we also have put together, Rory's got a way, if you want to talk to someone on his team to actually get clarity on this stuff, if you just go to freebrandcall.com/think, you can, or check the show notes on the podcast or the YouTube video. I really encourage you, if you just actually want to connect with somebody that can help you galvanize and maybe bounce some of your ideas and your thoughts off them, that's freebrandcall.com/think. And I want to hear about the brand DNA helix though. And I actually do have this written down. I was at an event when you spoke for Shalene Johnson, and I was sitting next to Heather Torres and Melissa Caputo on our team. And we were like, this is gold. And so you kind of walked us through these questions and this framework. And so I'm excited for you to share it with the Think Marketing podcast. But yeah, what is the brand DNA helix?
Yeah, so this is our framework for discovering your uniqueness. It's sort of the next step to Larry's advice of find your uniqueness so you can exploit it in the service of others. So it's 6 questions. And basically, we do one-on-one coaching. So if we were working with you one-on-one right now, we would ask you basically us these 6 questions, and you would brainstorm answers to the 6 questions. And then we would be looking, we teach our strategists to look for what we call thematic overlap. So basically at the intersection of all of these answers is where your uniqueness lies. And we actually already covered the first question. The first question is, what problem do you solve? So you brainstorm a list of, here's all the problems I think I could solve for people. These are things I know something about that people struggle with that I could help them overcome. And you just come up with a list. The next thing you do is, the second question is, what are you passionate about? And so you make a list of all of the things that light you up, that fire you up. And we want you to look at things that you get excited about, but also one of the keys here is to look for what pisses you off. What makes you mad? Like what makes you angry, as well as what makes you sad? Like what breaks your heart? What makes you cry? Like what is the thing where you look in the world and you go, I feel so bad that people struggle with this. And those 2 questions, what problems can I solve and what am I passionate about? They're kind of corroborative. You reconcile, that's how these 6 questions work, is you're kind of reconciling and you're looking for the intersection. So those are the first 2 questions.
That's brilliant. And, it's interesting too, because when I thought about video, and I talk with like Heather Heather Torres, the host of the Think Marketing podcast, she has a heart of empathy. She definitely comes from like this female nurturing side, loves helping people get clear on certain things, and might walk into an event and think about how the greeters greeted her, or think about how, how people were responding in there. Conversely, that's kind of what she's noticing. And if the energy's off or something, it would piss her off. She'd be like, man, why don't they have people? Why is there no energy here or whatever? Conversely, if I walk in the same event, I'll be like, why is that LED screen like flickering? Why are the lights turned off?
Yeah.
Why is the audio so bad here? And sometimes it's like, what do you notice? And that's not necessarily, we've all maybe been around people who are critical, but sometimes the thing you're being critical of is the thing you've been called to solve. Because you start realizing like, okay, those are the types of the flow of and being in church communications, and even being in communications. It went all the way back to getting started in video. Just so interesting that thing that makes you angry. And for some, it could be injustices, right? It could be these things, or it could just be, I don't like it when people don't communicate clearly, and they help people communicate clearly and structure their thoughts, or I don't like it when, and it can be so many different things. What pisses you off? What makes you sad? It actually frustrates me and makes me sad if people waste time in the beginning of their YouTube video. I'm like, you're wasting time on the hook. What are you doing? Some people are like, I thought it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. So interesting. What problem do you solve? What are you passionate about? That's the first helix, right?
Yeah, so the 6 questions work like a chromosome, right, in a brand DNA helix. So those first 2 kind of go together.
What's 3 and 4?
So 3 and 4 are, number 3 is, what do you research? So that is, what do you study? What do you learn about? This could be your formal education, but it's really more, what would you spend a Saturday afternoon learning about if you had free time and you would do it anyways? Like that's going to point us towards your uniqueness. And right, like our team can't just look at you and tell you your uniqueness. We have to like guide people through the process, and we kind of like hold up a mirror and reflect it back to them. But you have head knowledge, your uniqueness, whatever it is, you have head knowledge of it, which leads to question number 4, which is, what do you have results in? And results is different. That is not education, but experience. What have you actually freaking done? What path have you walked? Where do you have results? And these 2 questions, if the first 2 questions in the helix, problem and passion, kind of address like, what do you want to talk about? These next 2 questions, research and results, are sort of like, what have you earned the right to talk about? And if there's one shortcut to this process, this entire process, we realized that you are always most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. One of the reasons we started Brand Builders Group, right, is because like I remember what it felt like to sit in an audience and look at the speaker on the stage and go, that should be me. I remember walking through the airport and seeing the book on the shelf and being like, how do you get your book up there? Like my heart is so viscerally connected to that person. And then my wife, we built our former company together, and we stumbled through all of these mistakes and headaches to do it, and just realized we could have done this so much faster if we would have had someone just teaching us, but nobody had kind of pulled all those elements together. And so, that's who we serve, because that's who we were. So who were you? What problem have you solved? What question have you answered? What challenge have you overcome? You're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. So that's 3 and 4.
That's powerful. And the curse of knowledge, I know in our community happens all the time, to where we have like Nicole from Kids OT Help. She just crossed 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. She's scaled her business past 6 figures. She's done some brand collaborations, created her own courses. She's done a lot of things. And she is the mother of a couple kids now. And she is a kids occupational therapist. But it's really easy for people to count themselves out. Like, who am I to teach? What do I know? How do I, as she began to uncover that, she knows like secrets of just helping kids do tummy time and grow through those things. She knows secrets of breastfeeding, and she just knows all these things that she's learned the hard way. She's put the time in. The kids are still alive and they're they're thriving. And then she of course is also kids' occupational therapist. But so many listening, and I want to say this for the podcast, like that you sometimes can be blind even to the process that you've been going through the things you really have learned. It could be it could be curse of knowledge. It could just be lack of confidence. It could be that generally we're afraid to put ourselves out there and be bold and crack kind of through that shell, because turns out, I mean, Heather Torres is another great example, has a homeschool channel that she kind of does on the side. And she just goes, I just don't know what I would talk about. And I said, Heather, what are like the first 5 things I should know if I was going to be a new homeschool parent? She's like, oh, and she just could roll them off. I was like, what are the 3 mistakes that homeschool parent? She's like, oh, I'll tell you right now. She didn't have to prepare. She didn't need like notes. She could hit record. However, there was kind of that block there where sometimes we can be blind even to the fact that she had read 10 books on homeschooling, knew more. They say, right, Rory, that if you read like a book, you know more than 75% of the population. If you read 5 books, you know more than 99% of the population, just on a subject. Like just by going to Amazon and ordering Rory's books on procrastinate on purpose and take the stairs, you would know more about procrastination and self-discipline than 99% of the world. But yet it's so easy for us, right, to be blind to our own results. Have you noticed that kind of curse of knowledge, lack of confidence in those that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a conscious like imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm not good enough because I'm not a doctor, right? But remember, you only feel fear when you're thinking about yourself. Fear is so self-centered, right? People don't need experts. People need help. They don't need experts. They need help. They don't ultimately care what your credentials are. They care, can you help me? Can you guide me? Can you lead me? And when you think about your audience, you don't have that imposter syndrome. But I think another version is what you're kind of talking about, Sean, which is more of the like, I'm not an expert on anything. And you go, you totally are. Like everybody has done, you've been through something. What have you been through? You just don't realize the depth of it because to you, it's the curse of knowledge. And so I think that, ask yourself, who were you 5 years ago? Who were you maybe 10 years ago? And go, that's the person that you can reach. And by the way, when we get to marketing, which is a phase 2 conversation, so the brand builders curriculum is actually 4 phases. Phase 1 is brand positioning. That's what we're talking about right now. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that comes later. But when you get to writing copy, the best copy sounds like you're in the head of the person, and you can do that because you actually were that person. Like, what that person needs to hear. So, and it's also like, what's the thing you never get sick of learning about? You never get sick of talking about. Like those are, that's where it is. Like that's the uniqueness.
That is fire. Well, hey, we got 5 and 6.
We do. Okay, so so that is the uniqueness other than questions 5 and 6, which are really important because they address an actual really important part, which is, can you make any money with this? And this is where we're going to balance the passion with, can you make a real business out of this? So questions 5 and 6 are about money. Question 5 is, what are all the things people would buy from you? And we teach that there are basically only 5 ways to monetize a personal brand. We call them the paids. There's 5 ways to get paid from a personal brand. So it's an acronym. The P is products. You can take your pile of followers and you can sell them a physical product like a book or a clothing line or some equipment or whatever. The A in paids is ads and affiliates, which is interesting. So one of our big friends and clients, Lewis Howes, this is his business model. Lewis he does sell some stuff to his clients, like to his audience, but the number one thing Lewis sells is access to his audience. It's the people who sponsor his podcast, the School of Greatness, which is a monster podcast, right? So ads and if you're good at throwing a party, but you don't really love selling stuff, you might look at ads and affiliates. That could be a great model for you. If you're a great inventor, you might look at products, or like you could do a day planner. One of our friends, Michael Hyatt, sells day planner. Shalene has a planner, physical product. The I is information. So this has obviously been a burst, is to sell information products, which would be video courses, membership sites, assessments, certifications. There's been an explosion of information products because they're super valuable and they're, fairly low cost to create. And those are really great. The D in PAIDS is deals. So a deal is third-party deals where you are paid from a third party for the creation of some piece of art, regardless of how well it performs. So it's a TV deal, a book deal, a brand deal. You're getting paid a flat fee or a guaranteed advance, and sometimes you get royalties in addition to it. Usually that's for more mature brands. And then the S is services, which is always the fastest path to cash, is to sell your time for money. If you need to make money quickly, I'm telling you, the fastest way to get there is to sell your time, to be a fitness trainer, to be a coach, to be a consultant. The problem is, long-term, it's the least scalable. So services are a great way to monetize your personal brand. In fact, we work with a lot of like direct sales companies and stuff because, the best way to make money is to just take your personal brand and use it to sell the thing you're already doing. Like if you already have some business or you have a direct sales, side hustle or something, you could just use your personal brand to grow that thing. But if you're trying to if you have a corporate job and you really want to start something, you probably want to look at services first. That's how you're going to make enough money to pay your bills to break free. But then long term, you have to look at scale, which takes us to question number 6. So question number 5 is, what are all the things people would buy, which are the PAIDs? And you're going to look at not all of them, right? We're looking at one to start. Pick one. It's not about all of them. And then question 6 is, what business do you really want to be in long term? So that's a different question, is going, okay, well, short term, I need to do something to make money, but long term, what kind of lifestyle do I want to have? And this is where we encourage people to look for what we call dares. So the dares are the characteristics of awesome business models. So dares is also an acronym. It stands for digital, automated, recurring, evergreen, and scalable. If there were a perfect business model, it might be completely digital. It has no physical inventory, warehousing, cost of goods. It would be completely automated and self-serve, where you never had to talk to your client. They could just service themselves. It would be recurring, so people would just pay every month for that thing. It would be evergreen, meaning you never had to update or change the product. And it would be infinitely scalable. You could have millions of followers, millions of customers without adding any additional overhead. Now that business model doesn't exist. The truth is it's all about what do you want to trade off. Netflix, though, is probably the closest to it. But even Netflix isn't evergreen because they have to upload new content all the time. But Netflix is probably the closest that we have found. But ask yourself, of the dares, what do I have natural strengths in and natural, my team is well suited at creating digital or physical, automated or high touch, high customization, recurring or just one-time pays, and you just kind of so we help people sort of think through the inventory. Again, there's not a perfect answer. There's only a perfect answer for you. It's not about finding the truth. It's about finding your truth. It's your uniqueness that we're looking for here with the Helix.
Man, so powerful. The 6 questions and just some fire on monetization there. And I love that by really using every single question to find the thematic overlap to dial in your monetization, to dial in your brand positioning, to dial in what problem you're going to solve. And again, I do want to encourage you. Rory is a super world-class individual, and we align on so many things, not just world-class in business, but in family, life, values, faith, all those types of things. And have gotten to connect with him multiple times. So if you feel like you want more help, and we're only on one step of like 4 steps, right? You've got a whole team that can really help people get clarity for free. And of course, there's ways they can work with you and stuff like that. But even if they just want to get some clarity and really explore this process with somebody who can absolutely pull back kind of the confusion and really break through the noise. And even for people that are far along, because as I go through this, I'm like, man, we could dial this messaging in. We could dial our copy in. We could dial some things in. So freebrandcall.com/think. Of course, that's in the show notes. If you do want to get some clarity to dial in your personal brand. You mentioned now, though, this is just that first pillar, because what are the 4 stages of actually building a high impact, high profit personal brand that you take people through?
Yeah, so interesting. And so we do one-on-one coaching, as you mentioned, and the first call we do with people is like an introduction, first call free, get to know you a little bit and help you sort through some of this. So if you really want to zoom out big picture here for a sec, because you and I have never talked about this actually, so when you look at breaking through Sheehan's wall, Brand Builders Group we have one curriculum that is subdivided into 4 phases, and each phase actually has 3 courses. So our full curriculum is 12 different 2-day experiences. So we have a ton of stuff that we take people through, which is one of the reasons why we give away so much, because it's like we can't give it away like fast enough. Like there's a ton. But so phase 1 is what we call the branding phase. It's all about finding your uniqueness, and it's about your positioning. Where do you sit in the marketplace? And it's, I love how my friend Sally Hogshead describes this. It's like you want to neatly position yourself inside of a box that people understand, but then you want to clearly differentiate yourself from everyone else who's in that box with you. We do that in phase 1. In phase 2, we call that the marketing phase. This is traditionally what people think of when they think of personal branding. This is where we talk about funnels and email copy and websites and social media and podcasting and video, and also getting booked as a speaker. It's like, how do you market yourself? But one reason why a lot of people fail is because they skip phase 1 and they try to go straight to phase 2. They immediately I need to get my website launched. But it's like, you don't even know what to say. Like, you don't even know what words need to be on the website. Why are you so concerned about getting it launched? And it's just because that's what we see everybody doing. And
Rory, just to cut in there, I mean, that was a bomb right there on the podcast. Like, if you're not doing not just the right things, but in the right order, and it actually becomes the wrong thing if you start, you run out without fully having clarity, and clarity is power. Clarity is really that first step in uncovering that in that messaging phase. Okay, I love that. So then what's the next phase?
Yeah, so that's phase 2. And phase 3 is what we call selling. So phase 3 is where you've built a fire in phase 1 and phase 2. Now we're going to throw gasoline on the fire. And to what you just said, Sean, so this is where we introduce paid traffic. We teach people how to analyze paid traffic campaigns, and they learn their CAC and their LTV, lifetime value, and cost per click, and client acquisition costs, and all of that stuff to throw fuel on the fire. We teach. That's where you learn about doing affiliates. That's also where we teach. One of the courses is called Bestseller Launch Plan, and we talk about moving from self-publishing to traditional publishing, and how does the New York Times list work, and when should you use a New York publisher, and what's a Wall Street Journal bestseller, and how do you do that? And then we also talk about high dollar offer sales there in selling. And then in phase 4 is what we call scaling. Phase 4, our flagship course is called 8-Figure Entrepreneur, which you could actually think of these phases is this way. It's like, phase 1, you're just getting started. Phase 2 is become 6 figures. Phase 3 is grow to 7 figures. Phase 4 is 8 figures. And my wife and I have built 5 different 7-figure companies and 1 8-figure company that we sold back in 2018. And so we talk about there's a big difference between being a personal brand and scaling a personal brand into a business. Our former company had 200 people, right? And this is where you go, how do you become Dave Ramsey with 1,000 employees, or a Gary Vaynerchuk, or the Oprah, like these huge brands that reach millions of people? It's not just them, right? And it's not a little team. It's a big team. It takes a big team to make a big impact. And so that's what phase 4 is all about. We also teach people in phase 4 how to recruit and build a sales team, because typically by that point, to get to an 8-figure business, you're usually having to supplement marketing with sales, a true dedicated sales strategy, which is actually what we spent our whole past life doing. We used to only do sales. Brand Builders is more of a marketing, company, but that's the big picture, man. And then you kind of like, a lot of the clients we work with who are more of the like celebrity type, they kind of are repeating the cycle. So they've already done it once, and now they're reinventing their next business or their next book or their next thing.
Man, that's brilliant. And of course, you're breaking down your business model and how you can help people in this side of what you do with Brand Builders Group. But there's so much value in there. And I think that's a kind of a good question of the day, is thinking about what stage are you in? Are you in that branding, getting clarity stage? Are you in that needing to master marketing and maybe scale to 6 or beyond, in that selling, mastering sales and paid traffic? To your point, absolutely, it's like gasoline on the fire. But just like the mistake, sometimes a lot of people in our community, and even in like our inner circle program and different things, are like, hey, how do you do Facebook ads? How do you do Instagram ads? How do you do Google Display Network? And the question is, are you even ready? Like, have you proven your message? Have you proven your offer? Have you proven your product?
If you're not yet optimizing every YouTube video organically, you're not ready for that. Like, why would you not do the free thing first? And everyone wants to skip over that.
I love those steps, and obviously we can get a lot of value out of those. Again, we could talk obviously endlessly about all these different stages and all these details. So we definitely have to have you back on the Think Marketing podcast. And if you want to connect more with Rory, of course, all of his details are in the show notes wherever you're watching or listening to this. And if you do want to jump on with a free call with one of his strategists, links are there as well for that. Can't recommend it enough. We've had people in the past, when we recommended that on a different video, that got so much value out of connecting with Rory and his team. And so freebrandcall.com/think. Rory, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Man, it's such a privilege. I respect so much what you're doing, and I learn from you. Like, I actually follow you. You're just the epitome of just giving value and clarity and focus and over-delivering. And, the last thing I would just leave y'all with is, if you feel any fear or reluctance to go out and build your personal brand, it's because you're thinking about yourself. But if you feel that calling on your heart, we believe that is the result of a signal that's being sent out by somebody else. And there's somebody out there right now who needs you much more than you need them. So think about that person and go find them.
The question isn't which came first, it's who gets to take home that adorable little Reese's egg.
What the? It's a 4-word feminist manifesto. Because I'm worth it. I wrote that.
Rory and and Sean's conversation for me was so enlightening. I think, we talk a lot about clarity here at Think Media, and Rory just really took it to another level for me specifically, and I hope for you as well. And when I think about some key points that I wrote down that I want to make sure that you get into your notebook was you need to get clear on the exact problem that you solve. And you know that we teach this here at Think Media, but it's even just one level deep of what's your superpower? What is the thing that you are just so good at and that you could help people with? And I loved that Rory really carries the same spirit that we have here at Think, which is all about helping the people in your tribe. Who are you helping and how do you help them is the main question that we ask here when we're helping our clients get clear on their YouTube channels or how they want to grow their business on YouTube. And so I really hope that you take some time to evaluate that. A lot of times we listen to podcasts and we just move on to the next one, but I want to encourage you to take this podcast like a mini course and actually spend time answering these questions. So who do you help and how do you help them? And then the last thing is to remember that your personal brand isn't actually about you. Was that an enlightening point for you as well? I think for me, when I think about what should I be posting on social media or what type of content should I be creating, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about the person I want to help. And I think that the big piece where he said about fear is when you're making it internal, man, that really just breaks down some barriers. So I hope that you pick up your camera this week. I hope that you press record and you start creating content for the people that need you the most. And we're going to continue this type of clarity conversations at our annual conference, Grow with Video Live. You have an opportunity right now to win an all-access pass to our conference that's going to be happening virtually, which means you can attend no matter where you live in the world this fall of 2021. There's a couple things you have to do to enter to win this exclusive all-access pass. So make sure you go to thinkmarketingshow.com. I'll have that linked in the show notes below here on the podcast as well as on YouTube, wherever you're consuming this content on. And all you need to do is rate and review the podcast. Why rate and review it? Well, because that allows us to see who's part of our community here on the podcast. We get to hear your testimonies on there and learn what type of content you love for us to be creating. But it also helps to put this in the feeds of those other creators just like you. So if you rate and review this podcast, it helps us get the message of what we're trying to do here at Think out to other people. So if you want to enter to win one of those all access passes, all you need to do is rate and review over on iTunes and make sure you go to thinkmarketingshow.com for all of the details to enter this amazing giveaway. One of my favorite things to do here on the podcast is to read these reviews. And today's review and shout out goes to Whatever Works 234. They said, dropping growth bombs. Such a great podcast. Very encouraging for me in this journey, as well as helping me strategically grow my channel and more importantly, myself. Thank you so much for leaving that comment. That really is our heart here at Think Media. It's to help you have personal life change. And we want that to happen through growing your influence on YouTube. There's never been a better time right now for you to be creating content and helping people through the power of video and creating freedom-based filled businesses. I don't know if that makes sense, but basically it just means that I am so excited that Whatever Works 234 said that not only is it helping them grow their channel, but also themselves. This is the journey that I've been on, and I just want to help share the things that I've learned, and Sean wants to share the things that he's learned along this journey of growing on YouTube. Well, that wraps up today's podcast. Make sure you tune in next Tuesday for another fire podcast. I can say that because I've already listened to it. So make sure that you are here next Tuesday and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Up and save at Michael's with our lowest prices of the season. Get up to 60% off thousands of items. Shop now at Michael's.
Okay. Stop forcing ads for your forklifts on financiers. Start marketing to the right people by targeting industries and functions on LinkedIn ads.
work once to create the book. That book impacts thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people, right? And so I think it's, social especially, there's a huge difference. If I'm creating content on social that disappears from the news feed and the longevity of that content is not very good, I'm running on a hamster wheel of content creation. At least YouTube content, similar to a book, it has longevity, right? You create the content once and then that thing, it continues to rank, it continues to bring in traffic.
What if there was a way to dramatically increase the money that you're making from YouTube and your online business? A way to strengthen your personal brand and position yourself as the go-to authority in your topic and in your industry? And what if there was a way to slingshot ahead of the competition and build a powerful legacy through meaningful content that outlives you? Well, there is a way, and it's through writing a book. And hear me out. I know we're content creators and we're video creators and we're online entrepreneurs, but writing a book is one of the most powerful things you could ever do to achieve all of the benefits I just mentioned and more. And in this episode of the podcast, you're going to be learning from Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, and he's going to be talking about why and how writing a book can be the best decision you ever make to grow your YouTube channel, your influence, your business, and your income. We're going to be covering why you should self-publish a book, the opportunities of traditional publishing and self-publishing, who should self-publish a book, and the best ways to monetize your book. So if you're actually ready to bolt on additional income streams to your YouTube channel and accelerate your authority faster than ever before, then buckle your seatbelt and get ready for this episode of the Think Marketing Podcast. Today, we have Chandler Bolt on the podcast. He's the CEO of Self-Publishing School, and he's the author of 6 best-selling books, including his most recent book titled Published. He's a TEDx speaker. He hosts a couple incredible podcasts, and his passion is to help people write books so that they can grow their income, their impact, and grow their business. And so, Chandler, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. How's it going?
I'm great. Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Sean.
For sure. And I want to kick it off. If people are just meeting you, what is your story related to how writing a book transformed your life?
Yeah, so I'm a C-level English student and a college dropout with ADHD. So kind of one of the last people you'd ever think to write and publish a book. But I went from this guy who hated writing and hated reading. I was in all AP classes except for English, because if you were in AP English, you had to write more papers and you had to read more books. I didn't like doing that. And so I went from that to now books have changed my life. When I dropped out of school, I kept learning as if I was in school. I just translated that to books, and then I started writing books. And so I read 50-something books a year, and I've written 6 books, and that's the impetus of how I created Self-Publishing School. And then kind of a little bit of a more personal story. I had a friend that passed away when I was about 21 years old, and right in front of me, it was kind of a tragic accident. And right after he passed away, I found out that he had actually attended one of my random webinars and written a draft of a book, and we were able to publish that after he passed away. And so that was a big part for me, where I was thinking about pivoting into something else. And then I kind of took inventory of my life and said, hold up, this is one of the only things that I'm doing in my life that's actually having a meaningful impact on the world and making the world a better place. And so that really kickstarted me to double down on Self-Publishing School. And I feel like is now I'm living for 2. And, I've got this bracelet that says "Make Him Proud" on one side, WWKD, what would Kendall do on the other side. And so I feel like I'm living for 2. And a big part of that is through the work that we're doing with Self-Publishing School and helping change more lives through books.
Bro, that is a super powerful story. And it does make me think. I'm a father now, got a 6-month-old, and you do start thinking about what you're leaving behind. And, God forbid tragedies like that happen. But I think as maybe fathers or business leaders or pastors or mentors, or just somebody that just has a message and wants to help somebody with something practical, by actually galvanizing and organizing and putting your content in a book, it can outlive you and really build a legacy. That's super deep. Well, let's break it down. Why self-publish a book? Because there's so many different reasons. So many people that listen to this are YouTube content creators and kind of social media influencers, and they might, here's the objection, dude, like I'm publishing IGTVs, I'm publishing YouTube videos. Does anybody read books anymore? What good would it be for me to write a book? What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I think there's why write and publish in general, and then there's self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And so I think probably the first question is why even do it to begin with, which is, I think, is really the question that you asked. And I believe it's one of, if not the most powerful ways to grow your impact, to grow your income, and to grow your business if you have one. And so, I mean, it's follow your playbook, right? Sean, this is what we talked about when you came on the Self-Publishing School podcast is, the ways that you embed YouTube secrets is like YouTube Secrets will be the sponsor of one of your videos or will be the call to action. So you're ascending a relationship in a low ticket way. So especially for folks who are, creating content, YouTube, things like that, podcasts, whatever, it's a way to ascend the relationship. So I've gone from a free viewer to a paid purchaser of your book. And so it's a small piece of monetization, but then I'm deepening the relationship significantly, right? Then we're spending hours together. And then if I have other products, I can ascend into those as well, if that's what you choose to do. But as a business owner, I look at, as a human, I look at my books as part of my legacy. Like you said, it's the thing that, long after I'm off this earth, it'll still be here. Maybe it'll just be at a Goodwill, but it'll still be here, right? It's a part of my legacy. And then as a business owner, I look at it as a vehicle to generate more leads, sales, and referrals for my business. So my most recent book published generates, I don't even know, a few $100,000 at least every single year. People buy the book or they'll get a copy for free or, whether I'm speaking at events or free plus shipping funnel or whatever, they read the book and then they say, man, this is really helpful. I would love to work with Self-Publishing School on this, right? So I call it a silent salesman. You send the book out in the world and it brings back lead sales and referrals for your business.
That's so powerful. I've also learned that, which really is, I think, what leads to the kind of those leads and those sales is the authority. Like even still, books are still respected. And so by being able to say you're an author and truly being one, that's so helpful. I think it's also how it will help you personally level up. By going through the process of writing YouTube Secrets, I kind of could scattershot my advice before that. But then after, it was much more organized. I know Michael Stelzner in the past, when talking about speakers at Social Media Marketing World, he said one of the kind of prerequisites was he wanted people to be published authors because all that meant to them, or self-published authors, it just meant if they had a book that they had actually organized their thoughts. They had gone through the heavy lifting of trimming the fluff, putting it all together. And so I believe it sharpens you as an educator. It sharpens your proprietary process. It sharpens your ideas. It forces you to sharpen those things. So it was like a rip. Effect through all of my content. And I mentioned authority, but I think it's also positioning. Even up until this point, a couple other people since then, my friend Daryl, Brian, they've put out some pretty good books. But YouTube Secrets was like the first one in our industry, besides a lot of really poorly written 30-page ebooks. So all of a sudden, Benji and I, who co-authored the book, had like this piece of positioning in a digital social media space that allowed us to just be at a whole nother caliber of authority. And so there's been so many benefits.
Yeah. Well, and, it's to speak to those two things. The root word of authority is author, right? You can't spell authority without the word author.
I've never heard that before.
And also, it's exactly what you said. It forces you to crystallize your thoughts. And it's intimidating. This is why a lot of people don't want to do it or they feel uncomfortable doing it, is because as you're writing it, and I'm sure you felt this, you're saying, I'm crystallizing my thoughts into the written word. And that means I have to figure out what's my stance on this. But in doing so, now you can speak knowledgeably. You can break apart the book into those are individual talks or those are individual videos. And I think, if you're a content creator already, chances are you've already created at least a raw framework for your book, right? So you can video record your way to your book. Ministers or pastors, you can preach your way, like your sermon series is a book, right? Or one of them is at least. And so you can break that out and you can still cater to the medium that you do best, but while also crystallizing your ideas and what ultimately becomes a book.
That's an encouraging point you mentioned there is, Think Marketing podcast listeners, you're hearing this and you've already put out 100 video ideas or 10 or 50. You've already published, videos or blog posts or podcast episodes. Those are like chapters potentially, or those are potential chapters. And by putting your content out in public, actually you've posted 50 YouTube videos. 10 did really well. That's like people saying those should be the 10 chapters, and the other ones weren't as strong. And so there's so many powerful things in there. Well, I want to talk about even who you think should publish a book and what some of the best ways to monetize. Mm-hmm. But before we get there, you mentioned the kind of two questions, the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing. If someone's listening to this and they want to write a book and they're unfamiliar, they're like, I don't know which path I want to, could I even get traditionally published? Should I even pursue that route? Or even if I could, should I still pursue self-publishing? What's kind of the difference? Break that down.
Yeah, so there's 3 or 4 main differences. It starts with distribution. So it used to be that the only way to sell books was to get your book into bookstores, right? And to get into bookstores, you had to have a publishing deal. To get a publishing deal, you had to have an agent. So you start way back here and 3 years later, you've got a book that's out in the world. Well, now over 70% of all books sold are sold on Amazon. Right. And you don't need a publisher to publish a book on Amazon. So distribution has kind of fell by the wayside as a major sticking point. And now there's 3 main differences. There's the royalty rates, there's the time that it takes, and then there's the cost to publish. And so for royalty rates, you're looking at, if you're traditionally publishing, 8 to 12%. So we're talking $1, maybe $2 per book. If you're self-published, on the other hand, it's anywhere from 20% to 70% on the digital Kindle version. So that's a big difference. Maybe that's $5 to $8 a book, depending on pricing and stuff like that. So that's the royalty rate difference, pretty big difference. Time it takes, if you're traditionally publishing, minimum of 2 years. And then there's kind of, if you're self-publishing, maybe it'll take you a year, maybe it'll take you a decade, depending on how disciplined you are. I think the stats about 60 or 70% of our students write and publish in less than a year. So saving a bunch of time in that process. And then there's the cost. So obviously, if you're going traditional publishing, they're going to cover the cost of publishing for you. And then there's kind of this middle ground, which is hybrid publishing. Some people call it vanity publishing. This is where you pay someone most often to publish your book. It might be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, and you're paying. And sometimes they also take a royalty cut, kind of depends. And then there's self-publishing, obviously, which that means you're going to have to pay the cost yourself. And so big 3 costs, sorry, this is a long answer, but big 3 costs are cover design, editing, formatting. Those are kind of your main 3 costs. Can cost anywhere from a few $100 to a few $1,000, or maybe more if you really don't know what you're doing, or if you just want like spending money, then you can spend more than that. But that's kind of the ballpark. But the long and short of it is, for 99.9% of authors, it makes more sense to self-publish. Now, disclaimer, I run self-publishing school and I own selfpublishing.com. So obviously I'm biased, but I really think the only time it makes sense to traditionally publish is if you're a big name with a big audience and you can get a big advance. That's the only time. So if you're, Tony Robbins, Sean Cannell, Oprah, and you can get a big advance, then awesome. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it still makes sense not to, but that's, in my opinion, the only time it makes sense to do that. It's kind of like, if you've ever heard the saying, it's like banks only lend money to people who don't need it. Publishers only give publishing deals to people who don't need it and who can sell the books without them. So that's kind of.
How about ownership? Because one of the other reasons why I love self-publishing school, or I love self-publishing school as well, but self-publishing is you got the rights to your book. And I know that's maybe if you traditionally publish, they kind of own rights and maybe distribution for a certain number of years, or you might even have to buy it back, or it's not released.
often in perpetuity, and depending on how well you negotiate the contract, they'll own the content in perpetuity, at least in book form. Now, sometimes you can also, this is a small tip if you're going the traditional publishing route, negotiate out. There's a few things you should negotiate. You should negotiate out your audiobook rights. That's really important because now that's a separate income stream for you, and a lot of publishers don't think about that. You can negotiate out foreign rights. You can also negotiate your author, the price of how many author copies they send you, and the price that you can purchase author copies at. Which, if you want to sell books elsewhere or buy books or use them as part of speaking events or whatever, you definitely want to negotiate that. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, typically, to answer your original question, the publisher owns the rights to the book in perpetuity.
Yeah, so from my point of view, and pre-YouTube Secrets, which is self-published, we thought a ton about this and already had influence that we could have pursued the other route. And by the way, if you want to learn more about this, Chandler and I have a training that we're doing together. It's live, or if you want to catch the replay, depending on when you're listening to this podcast, at startyourbook.live. If you really want to go deeper in how you can get your book written in just 90 days, from literally blank page to getting it live on Amazon. And if you're thinking about writing a book, on the idea of self-publishing, to me, the huge thing was kind of that rights thing. Because I also thought, man, if I could get some practice, get a book or two under my belt, even if I had more celebrity later, those other books would have lift, and I would have as opposed to the reverse, being that like, oh shoot, what if it blows up? What if it goes really big? Because you could always inject new life into it. Like almost like I could go self-published first, maybe traditional published later, and I could activate my back catalog with a greater level of profitability as opposed to getting, one or two, or have the rights to even sell it later. And now I'm worth more. It's sort of like that idea. It's kind of like the record industry where all of a sudden you blow up and now like you're in a bad contract.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And a lot of people do that. Some people don't, right? Like a lot of people, they'll self-publish the book and it'll sell so well that it'll get picked up by a traditional publisher and they'll get a better deal, which is amazing. And that works really well for them. But then then some people choose not to. Like I just did a webinar earlier today with Hal Elrod. He's sold like 2.5 million copies or something of his self-published book, The Miracle Morning. And publishers are just throwing money at him trying to buy the rights to that book. And he's like, no, show me the math. Okay, now I'm going to make way more money. I'm self-publishing a book or keeping this book self-published. He parlayed that into his book, The Miracle Equation, and got a good deal for that. And so that's traditionally published. And then kind of so that you get a big advance, and he did well with that. And then you still have the cash cow of your first book. And then also, even something as simple as a really effective thing that helps sell more books is running Amazon ads. I always say that, Google is the search engine of browsers. Amazon is the search engine of buyers. Everyone's just focused on SEO on the Google side of things. But Amazon, people are there for one reason and one reason only. That's to buy stuff with their credit card on file. So I would rather rank, I'd like to rank on both, obviously, and we're actively working towards that. And we do rank on both. But I would rather rank on Amazon because there's lower competition. And if I want to run ads, I can't do that. If I have all my friends that are traditionally published, I'm like, hey, go through and set up your Amazon ads. And I can't. The publisher owns that, and I'm offering to pay them money, and they won't even set up Amazon ads, right? So even just small, simple things like that, where you have the control of your book, you can market it the way you want. You can get I give away the audiobook for free. That means tons of leads. So I'm getting paid to get leads instead of paying for leads. Like all those little things like that, in a lot of cases, you just can't do if you're traditionally published.
Running a creator business is overwhelming. Constant content creation, community management, juggling of platforms, and unpredictable income. There has to be an easier way to monetize through memberships. Enter Uscreen. Hands down, the best all-in-one membership platform designed specifically for video creators. We help you generate consistent subscription revenue without losing your mind, with powerful monetization features, easy distribution across devices with a branded membership site and apps, sleek video organization and streaming capabilities, and community tools built to engage and retain more customers. Uscreen gives you the power to connect with your audience like never before, and the VIP treatment from our team of experts on hand to help you every step of the way. To make consistent, reliable revenue while keeping full control of the brand and business you've worked so hard to build. Start your membership journey with Uscreen today.
Uber Eats is delivering more deals so you can watch more basketball. Right now, get Wingstop's 4-piece tenders for free to get food to watch basketball. And then more food to watch more basketball. Order now, only on Uber Eats.
Can't do if you're traditionally published.
That's super powerful. And yeah, we are in constant positive ROI running ads on YouTube Secrets ebook, which also means we're meeting new people, which kind of gets us teed up for best ways to monetize your book, what it can lead to. But just really quick, so who should self-publish a book? So I just think in our community, Nicole, kids occupational therapist, 100,000 YouTube subscribers.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I mean, like, right? Like she could write like for new moms, like a motherhood. Fly Ride. He does custom LED lighting. He's also kind of into building businesses, and he's now scaling an influencer. He's on Clubhouse a lot. He's scaling. He's doing a lot of kind of social media stuff. So that could be interesting because maybe, I don't know if you'd buy a book about custom LED lights, but he's now built 10 different income streams around what was a traditional business. Ben from Keto Camp, he's got his book coming out, of course, ketosis, and that's a big one. So I just think about, I think that YouTube content creators might have not thought about doing this, but I think it's one of the smartest. It's not necessarily easy. That's where you come in. It's not easy. Yeah. It's really easy to get off the rails. It's really easy to. Heather's actually working on her book right now, and it's had her in tears because it's emotional. Like it's it's the kind of thing.
Call it free therapy.
No doubt about it.
Especially if you're writing about a personal topic, it's free therapy. Like you're going to have to work through some stuff.
Yeah. And so, but who should self-publish a book? I mean, you've helped so many people. What are some of the stories that are just remarkable about some books that have gotten off the ground that have helped people scale whatever they're doing in marketing or social or some other weird kind of business?
I'd say, there's kind of two camps. There's the legacy camp and then there's the business camp. Some people are saying, hey, I just want to do this. And if no one but my kids and my grandkids read this, I'm good. And then other people say, hey, I want to very strategically use this book to grow a business. And so we've got so many examples on both sides of that spectrum. One of my favorites is we had someone join self-publishing school years ago to write a book about physical therapy and back pain. Really awesome, doing an amazing thing. He's a physical therapist, but then his daughter saw it and said, hey, Dad, that's really cool. I want to write a book. And he said, all right, well, why don't you write, 500 words and come back to me? And thinking like, okay, I'm going to brush her off. And she's just saying this. She's not going to actually do it. And then she comes back like a couple hours later and she's got words written. And so then they worked kind of every Saturday at Panera Bread for weeks. And then she published a book. It made $3,000 or $4,000 in the first few months. She donated a bunch of money to autism awareness. Like now she's been on all these local TV shows. She's doing speaking gigs. She made like $1,200 or something from her first speaking gig. Like at 8 years old. And now it's just like, I think about her life trajectory as a young woman and just the confidence, like the opportunity. She has a monthly allowance, which is really just her book royalty money that shows up every month, right? Like just life trajectory totally changed. And that's one of my favorite stories. And so a good example for the parents as well of like, hey, if you decide to do this, your kids are watching and they're paying attention. And when you go after your goals, they see that and they might want to do it too.
I love that. And I was kind of taught in this, even coming up, Chalene Johnson, who I know and have done stuff with, it helps you as a speaker, you have you're maybe more in demand as a speaker because like, oh, you're a published author. Plus it could be the thing that happens from on stage. My friend Rory Vaden was on the podcast. Books have been a huge, thing for him. Obviously, so many different people, whether you're, you talked about the business camp. Man, if you've got a proprietary process, if you are a coach, a consultant, and it also can help you carve out a whole new side of business. And I think one of the big things that's interesting is I think sometimes we just have this myth of, well, I create all this content on social media. I've reached the maximum market. Of course I want to grow on Google or social more. Like does anybody even read books? It's like, are you kidding? It's a whole nother actual side. And then like audiobooks, a whole nother conversation. Like some of the Gen Z people from our team, they're literally like, I don't read books, but I listen to audiobooks all the time. Like I'm just addicted to Audible. So once you've actually written the book, now you're going to get it in audio form. And that's a whole nother arm. Like what's the opportunity there? And that kind of ties more into this YouTube thing, because we're here on a podcast. It's also a video podcast.
Yes.
But the audio is the person people are watching on their phone, listening on their phone. They're listening to iTunes. To move over to Audible or whatever and start consuming that audio while they're driving, while they're on, doing chores, while you're on a walk. It scales, like our friend Pat Flynn says, it scales intimacy because someone watched, you've seen the audience retention on a YouTube video. It's 2 minutes, 4 minutes, even of a 25-minute video. Someone commits to you in an audiobook. Now they've spent, even if they don't finish it, an hour with you, 2 hours with you, 3 hours with you. You read it yourself. They're hearing your voice. They're learning more about you. And it's such another level of depth, which speaks to that 1,000 true fans. It speaks to that like deeper than just vanity surface level social media metrics, but really going deeper. What are some of the things that people do with audiobooks with you guys?
Yeah, so I think you spoke to a really crucial distinction, Sean, which is I call this concept leveraged impact. So it's doing work once. And so you do the work once to create the book, and then that book impacts thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people, right? And so I think it's, social especially, there's a huge difference. If I'm creating content on social that disappears from the news feed and the longevity of that content is not very good. I'm running on a hamster wheel of content creation. This is what I love about you, what you guys are teaching on YouTube, and why, I bought your course and sent my team through it, and we're creating YouTube content and all that, because at least YouTube content, similar to a book, it has longevity, right? You create the content once, and then that thing, it continues to rank, it continues to bring in traffic, like there's longevity. So leverage impact, you're creating it once, and then then you add in the audiobook component. And if you have a podcast, it's a no-brainer, because the people who listen to your podcast would buy your audiobook. And so there's an instant crossover. There's all kinds of minutia things that are kind of cool, like the Audible bounty, which is when people go to try Audible and you're the first book that they download, whether you did that or it just happened, Audible pays you. They're always changing it, but it's like 50, 75, $100. So I have a few $100 a month that comes in just from Audible bounties, right? And so that's another stream of income. And there's people listening to the audiobook, and then it gets into the stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about more in depth later. But where I look at it as a business owner, again, is it leads, sales, and referrals. And so leads are people that have heard of me because of my book, right? How many people wouldn't have heard of ClickFunnels if it wasn't for Russell Brunson's books, right? So new people in your ecosystem. Then there's sales, so getting a higher percentage of people who heard about you to do business with you as kind of like a transfer mechanism. So just like you do, use the book as part of your webinar, or use the book as part of the sales process, and you're going to see a conversion rate lift on all those things. And then lastly, as a referral mechanism, so give 2 copies to every customer, right? And say, hey, here's one for you, and here's one for a friend that needs help with XYZ. I do this all the time, and I think we've been at events together, and whenever I'm speaking, I bring hundreds of books and give them all away. Because then it's like there's just an army of people, and everyone around the conference is like, wait, hold up, what's that? And then some people don't even read the books, but they'll, it's like if I would have given them a business card, they would have thrown it away probably within 24 hours. But now they're holding that book. They take it home. They don't throw it away. It's in their home. It's in their office. And every time they see it, they think of me in self-publishing school. And then maybe they don't even want to publish a book, but someone comes by their house or their office and says, hey, what's that? And they say, oh, you want it? You can have this copy, right? And so you're turning customers or prospects into a referral engine, as John Jantz would call it, for your book. And so that's how I look at it, kind of the 3 buckets as an entrepreneur of how do I plug the book into what I'm already doing to bring back leads, sales, referrals.
Man, super, super powerful. And if you're like fired up by everything that Chandler's saying, and you want to learn more about this, especially like what is we haven't really got into how do you start to self-publish your book? How do you start writing it? You might have a lot of mindsets of self-doubt, like, oh, do I have anything to say? Or I'm not a good writer. I wasn't good in English. Like these things can kind of hold us back. And that's where Chandler's process can really help you. If you want to watch a free training, of course, at the end of it, you'll learn more about all the ways that self-publishing in school can help you. But the free training alone is so valuable that we're doing together. It's at startyourbook.live, and you can watch that free webinar. And that's what are they going to learn on that training?
Yeah, so you'll learn three things. So you're going to learn how to write your book in as little as a weekend, which I know probably sounds crazy, but I'll teach you the 3-step process to either write your book or speak your book if you choose to do it that way, kind of a choose your own adventure. We'll go more in depth on self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And then we're going to talk about how to use or how to launch your book successfully. So I've got something really cool that I'll talk about on the launch front that'll help you get more reviews.
With Field Engineers' help, we have expanded our product portfolio to include support for all major OEMs hardware. We grew our global reach